struggle to understand, how do we use them with young people? And, particular areas that are really difficult, like values. How do you work with a young person on values? And how do you make it so that it's not appliance, so that it's not what adults think the young person should do, but actually what the young person is engaged in and what they care about? So we had lots and lots of those kind of questions. And then we started our journey. When I say we, I'm talking about my co-author, Joseph Cherokee, and I. We started to write together on how to do this work for young people. And it's been really an incredible journey to try to find ways to make ACT developmentally appropriate, easy but not lost in translation, so that it still had that deep complexity and that deep meaning that we know and love about ACT, but was easily translatable and easily to be able to be used. And over the course of a number of years, Joseph Cherokee and I came up with a developmental model of ACT. It was a way of thinking about ACT inside development. And our question was, how do you grow in a way that makes you flexible? How do you grow and develop into flexibility? As we all know, many of the challenges we face are related to our learning when it's different in different cultures, of course, in different countries, but a lot of the things that happen to us happen in our learning history. So in my culture, for example, I grew up being told to hide my feelings and to control my feelings and to be strong and have a stiff upper lip, as we call it in the English speaking culture of mine. And so when we work with adults to do ACT, we're trying to help them kind of relearn a different way, how to have feelings and how to be flexible with them, how to be flexible with your thoughts. But with young people, it's different. They don't have that learning history in the same way. So instead, we moved into a way of thinking, how do we teach this? How do we make it part of a family so that we're helping children grow in ways that are flexible? And we ended up coming up with a developmental model of ACT that we call DNAV. I'm going to walk you through that just a little bit, just to give you a sense. And this is a webinar that I created a few months ago. Actually, it was in February, and it was on the back of the bushfires that we had in Australia and the beginning of the pandemic. They were all happening at the same time. And it was about, and continues to be about, how to help, how to use this developmental way of understanding ACT in the times of difficulty. And so it's a little bit related to fires, but I know that you also have fires in South America. So, and it's related to pandemic, and I know you have pandemic in South America. So I'm just going to talk you through it a little bit, and I might put some slides in as well so that you can make it a little easier. Now, Manuela, I can see you, but I can't see Paulina. So let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. I'll be able to see you. It's all right? Okay. No worries. Yeah, no, that's fine. Just, I forgot that you can just unmute yourself and tell me. So just let me know if I'm going too fast, or if there are particular words that are confusing or don't translate very well. Perhaps it's easiest, Paulina, if you just unmute yourself and tell me and interrupt me and tell me, and I'll do it then. Sure. Okay. So, what I'm going to talk about is helping young people in the time of change, and really helping ourselves in a time of change too. We are in the midst of just enormous amounts of change, really, and some days I cope with it well, and other days I just feel like, oh my goodness, I'm done with this. So a lot of this talk is inside a new book that we have just had released. We don't have a Spanish translation yet because it's only just been released in September. Your Life, Your Way. But I think someone will translate it into Spanish because our other books have been translated into Spanish. And I really do hope that this one ends up being translated into Spanish, because it's a really, I'm really very proud of it. I think it's our best work ever. And so inside this work is the culmination of these 3 books that we've written for young people. And this new one, Your Life, Your Way, is written for young people to be able to just use. And because it's written for young people, there's not a lot of text in it anyway. It has images, and I think it would be fairly easy to use and translate even without an official translation. But we'll get one, I'm sure. So the idea behind working developmentally with this work is we began to think of everything a human does in to classes of behaviour. And so the model that we came up with looks like this disc model here, DNAV, and many of you are probably aware of it. But the way to think about it is to think about everything that a human does and how we learn to do these things. We group them into categories or classes of behaviour, and we came up with 6 things, but they're not like the hexaflex, the ACT hexaflex. And so just think of them as processes. We often train them as processes or loose classes of behaviour. And it doesn't really matter what labels you use. So we call them the discoverer, the noticer, and the advisor. And these images can help you think about ways to translate. So you can see the advisor is wearing a suit. So this is a guy in a suit, or a girl in a suit. We have both. It's a guy in a suit. It's like the person who knows everything, who tells you what to do. And we called it Your Advisor, just as a way of helping young people create some distance and get a sense of what this behaviour is about. So your advisor is a word we use to describe the way you talk to yourself, the way you tell yourself what to do, and the way, as you grow, your language, your verbal behaviour, your thinking, talking, remembering, speaking becomes a way of navigating the world. So when you translate into Spanish...
Louise, sorry to interrupt you. Is happening some problem with the translation.
Okay.
Hola a todos. Los que tienen problemas con la traducción están en el canal en español abajo en el globo terráqueo. Sí, se bajó el volumen. Ok.
Exacto, Manu, se bajó el volumen de la traducción. Se le escucha bien a Luis, pero la traducción se escucha muy bajito.
Okay.
Yo te escucho perfecto. Paulina, me voy al canal en español y podés hablar, a ver si te escucho.
You're very loud for me, Paulina.
Te escucho perfecto, sí. Ahí va de nuevo. Ahora sí, ahora se arregló. Gracias. Now it's solved, Louise. Sorry for the interruption.
No problems at all. No problems at all. So you're loud for me, Paulina. So if that helps, I can hear you. So I want you to think of them as classes of behavior, and it doesn't matter what you call them. So you can translate them into a Spanish word is perfectly fine. Don't think that we have to use those words. It's just a class of behavior that we gave a label to. So the advisor is like, think of it like the guy in the suit, you know, who tells you what to do. And the noticer, actually, when we came up with this image of the noticer, I sent it to Kelly Wilson, Manuela, and I said, I think this is you. I said, I think our artist has come up with artist has come up with the picture of you, Kelly. For those of you who know Kelly Wilson, you'll know what I mean. So notice the noticer is our ability to be in the world, to be aware of what's going on inside us, to be aware of what's going on outside us, and to learn how to respond. So it includes feelings, but also very much includes an embodied sense of being in the world. So it includes how we move our body, how we come close to people or pull away from people, all of those embodied ways of understanding and being in the world. And that's why we have him looking a bit like a hippie or Kelly Wilson. We didn't deliberately draw a picture of Kelly Wilson, just to be clear. The artist just came up with the noticer that looked like this young person. And then the discoverer is the behavior of trial and error. So it's the behavior of learning to try things. And that's why we have him as a person, you know, going out to explore things. And if you think of it, it's if you think of what we call the discoverer, it's trying things to see what happens. It's developing our repertoires of behavior. The way that I remember it is to think of a toddler learning to walk, and they stand up and they fall down, and they stand up and they fall down. And it's that behavior, that ability to develop agency and to develop determination and to use your behavior, your way of moving in the world. And for children, it's playing and exploring and climbing and jumping and running. And then for teenagers, it's going beyond their family and developing relationships in the big world and finding first love and romance and independence and all of those things. And then there is the way that we see ourselves, which we call self-view, which is understanding that I am the one who is a noticer, a discoverer, and giving myself advice. It's kind of seeing that I am able to do all those things. And sometimes we talk about it as like a selfie view. I'm sure you have the concept of selfie in South America. And it's like the way in which young people are able to take a selfie and then look at that and see themselves in that way. And then there's something that we call social view, which is the ability to know that you can see other people and interact with other people and understand other people, and that they have things going on inside them too. And so we use all of those behaviours, our discoverer, our noticer, our advisor, and our social and self-context. We use those to help us create a world with meaning, a life that has some meaning. And that includes vitality and energy and engagement and fun. And it also includes value and being connected in the world. So we call it the V because we want to broaden it from just thinking about value. We want to think about vitality too. So vitality is that sense of engagement and connection and fun that is really important even from birth. That engagement with the world, and value comes later. So when we work with young people, we begin by helping them think about what is their V. And what we know is to manage change and hardship, you have to get to know yourself. You have to get to know what you care about and what you value. And so what we want to do is we want to help young people begin to know themselves and what gives them a sense of fun and vitality, what gives them the sense of passion and energy. And we want to help them use that to overcome and help themselves become bigger and grow. So it's very much a strength-based approach. How do you become bigger and grow? And then what's really important with this work is we think of not just what I value, but what we value as a group. And it becomes really important to think of value not just for me, but as a shared sense. So there's not just what I care about, there's also what my family care about, and what my school care about, or my friends, or my community. And one of the reasons that we do that is we know that young people grow in a context and we learn values from other people. And that happens all across our development. It's really important to be connected to a social world and to not just think about what I care about, but to have that nested inside my social world. And here's an interesting study that came out really quickly. This came out in March. I don't know how they did it that fast, but it was a COVID survey of young people. Pretty incredible to do it so quickly. And young people were asked how important it was to consider the needs of other people and to make sure that all people were treated fairly. And what they found is the more young people agreed with this comment, the more likely they had greater social trust, the less likely they were to hoard or to have behaviours that were in the self-interest during the beginning of the pandemic. And so participants who reported caring about their own self-interest over others were less likely to social distance. So when we're working with young people and we start to use the concept of values, especially now in the pandemic, the implications are really important for thinking not just about what I value, but what we value, and for making that a whole social thing. We have never before been in a time where we need to focus so much on what we care about. And we really want to make that not what we call pliance in the behavioural community. Manuela, do you think people know the word pliance in a technical sense?
Some of them yes, and some of them no.
Okay, so you can perhaps translate if you need to, but pliance is doing something because you have to. Doing something because the social world says you have to. That's not very useful behaviour. But what we want to do is have people do something that benefits the community because they care about it and they want to. And to really understand that we humans exist in a multi-level system. And so it's interesting research right now to think about us as a multi-level system in which everything I do influences other people. And that's part of values work. Not in a, you must do this, you must wear a mask because it's better for everyone, but in a, why would you care about that? And what we know is that if we can help people think about the community and work as a community, then we're going to get the behaviours that we want to see. And thinking about us. I'll just make a note. Some of these drawings, like this one and this one, these are drawings from a UNICEF youth project. The link is here. And Manuela, I can put the slides if you want. You can have the slides and put them in the chat.
Thank
or
you.
do whatever you want with them. But they're really nice. These are young people's drawings of the pandemic and thinking about how they can manage it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to very quickly, too quickly, talk to you about each of these classes of behaviour and how they might look right now in the world we're living in. So the way in which advisor, the way in which we talk to ourselves, noticer, the way in which we embody and be a sense of ourselves in the world, discoverer, the way in which we develop repertoires of behaviour that allow us to have agency, and the V, value and vitality, what we care about. And so I'm going to just quickly walk around and just give you a sense of how we might use it right now. So I want to begin with asking you to think about what you notice inside you. And you can do this from yourself and really get a sense of the behaviours that we're talking about. Now, there are, of course, more technical definitions of what each of these classes are, and you can read about that. We can save it for another time for a more technical definition. But what I want you to think about is I just want you to be aware of what you notice happens inside you as we begin to look at some of these things that are happening in our world right now. So as we begin to think about the pandemic and people who we love who are no longer here, and fires and floods and climate crisis, and all of the things that we face right now. And what I'd like you to do, just to get a sense of what we're thinking of in this model, is to really understand how it feels inside your body. And then on top of the contextual issues that we face, we also, of course, have political turmoil, fake news, economic challenges, and everywhere you look, there's just one thing after another. And I want you to imagine for a moment what that must be like if you're 15 years old. And to think about how the world must look from a 15-year-old's perspective. And this is a very, I don't know if this will play, but it might. This only goes for about 10 seconds or 20 seconds, Paulina. It's just a young person talking about what life in the pandemic is like. And it doesn't want to play.
I just feel so lonely all the time. Like, I talk to my friends, but as soon as I'm done talking to them, I'm like, oh my God, where did everyone go?
I've been really low energy. I've been really depressed. It's fun.
If I could go outside right now, I would probably go play basketball. And it's just my way to clear my mind and be happy.
I'm not worried about coronavirus for myself, like getting it, because I believe that I'd probably be fine.
My biggest fear is, being a carrier for coronavirus and spreading it to my family and loved ones who are immunocompromised.
What scares me most right now is the pace it's picking up throughout the world.
I feel like every day it kind of hits a little closer to home.
What scares me the most is my grandparents getting it.
My grandma loves to come over. She loves to garden in our yard and help out whatever she can. But I'm so worried for her.
So what I want you to think about is in this place that we call the noticer space, I want you to be aware of what it feels like inside you as you watched and heard those little bits of video and just looked at some of the images, and just be aware of what you feel. And I've made a note of what I feel when I watch it. But this is how we would use the work and begin to think about it. And so you might not be able to see my little writing, but what I feel when I watch that is fear and anger and frustration and sadness. And I feel annoyed and I feel despair and I feel heaviness, and I'm not 15. And you can see that young people all across the world are deeply influenced by what's happening right now, not just the pandemic, but everything. And in many ways, they're excluded. People think that they are being selfish when they try to go out and socialize, for example, without necessarily a developmental understanding of why they might do that. And so the noticer is all about what you experience inside you and being able to be flexible with that, to understand that all of those things that I have going on in me right now and that you have going on in you right now make us normal, make us connected, and is not something that we have to be afraid of. And if we can truly turn to that and begin to talk about it, then instead of behaving badly or behaving in ways that try to shut down our experience, we might be able to actually face some of the things we have to face. Sure, I think I pushed the mic away a little bit, Pauline. Let me know if it's not loud enough. And I tend to get quiet when I get emotional. But the mic is, I've got a big fat mic here, Pauline. Tell me if it's not loud enough. Thank you, Paulina. So what we want to think about is, I'm just going to leave this, you can look later. Helpful ways to use your noticer, and that includes things like being aware of your feelings, being able to slow down and pause, being able to talk about it, trying not to be afraid of it. And when we do that, we can help young people accept what's going on inside them and choose ways to take action. So we think about accepting and choosing ways to take action. And some of those things include understanding how to manage your feelings. I just use the big picture. How to manage your feelings, what to do, self-soothing, mindfulness, things that can help your body when you feel big feelings. And of course, we know there are lots and lots of things that we can do. And once again, these drawings are all drawings from UNICEF. I particularly like this one. This is a 12-year-old girl from India. And she said, I missed school and I missed my teachers. I was scared of how I was supposed to learn. I mostly work out Okay, no worries. I mostly work out through dance and stretching. And I started practicing meditation and I love to draw. And so this is a way of helping a young person use their noticer to take action. And that includes self-soothing and those things. And some key skills that we teach young people, being aware of your breath, of course, is one of the most important skills we have. Being able to center your awareness on your body. And being able to tell yourself how you feel. And sometimes I wish that we had really complex technical things to teach people, because then they might think it was really like a medicine. And instead, when I'm teaching a young person to be aware of their breath and be able to tell themselves how they feel, it sounds so easy that I think they don't realize how powerful it is. And the same goes for adults. So it's all about accepting and understanding. And then what we try to do is use our noticer skills to connect it to value, things that you can do that can help you, that you might care about. Like you can use your awareness to connect with nature or the people you love. or to use your awareness to do things that help you when you have feelings, like watch sad movies and cry. And you can use your noticer to connect with people in the world, to use it to smile and laugh together, to use it to connect with your friends, to tell stories. Lots and lots of ways you can actually use your own noticer to build a social view of the world. So this is obviously very quick. And so sometimes the thing that gives me hope is these people. So you may not know all of these people, but of course this is Greta Thunberg, the climate change activist, and Malala, the, what was her nationality? Pakistani, I think she's Pakistani. She's a Muslim girl who was shot and then won Nobel Peace Prize. No, maybe she was Afghani. I'm sorry, I've gone blank. And Maria Gonzalez, the girl who was fighting gun control in America. So these are all teenagers who have used their noticer experience to connect with it, to own their feelings of anger and despair, and to find ways to develop agency in the world. And they don't have to, when you work with your young people, it doesn't have to be world changing. You can change the world by reaching out to a friend. And so we want to use these noticer skills in ways that are big and small, and really move into a strength-based, action-based approach. You have agency and you can do things. And so then when we talk about this, here I've written in red. So this is what my personal little plan. And this is what I've written in black, what I was talking about, what I experience when I think about what's going on in the world. And in red are the things that I can do. Practice being aware of my body. Pause. Taking mindful actions. Switching my views from my feelings and my big emotions into doing something else that I can take action on. Now, of course, the difficult part about taking action is our advisor. So think about your advisor as self-talk and the ability to, as you grow, learn to use language to tell yourself what to do. And it's all about predicting and using thinking and language to decide what should happen next. And now the problem in the world that we have at the moment for young people is our advisors are constantly fed difficult information that's really hard for us to take in. Like, I mean, this is quite an old slide, coronavirus deaths past 250,000. We're way above that now. And to think about the ways in which what's happening in the world, we use our language to respond with fear. And this research is from the Lancet, and we know that young people are overlooked in disasters like the pandemic because they're not getting sick. Their mental health is overlooked. And recent data shows that they have the highest rates of mental health problems right now in terms of the pandemic and what's happening. And that makes sense to me because of their fear that they won't have a future. And that there is research showing that children who are isolated and in quarantine can end up with post-traumatic stress disorder. And that the separation that they feel from their friends is powerful and can be a significant problem for them. And this is a UNICEF policy brief on this is several months old, and I haven't got a recent update on the impact of COVID-19 on children. And it talks about the most damaging effects are from children in poorer countries and in poorer neighbourhoods and in vulnerable and disadvantaged situations. So one of the things that I think is that's really important to be aware of how young people are experiencing this. And sometimes they're also judged and criticised for wanting to socialise and do things. So the way that we use this model is to think about what you notice happens to you as I think about what's going on in the world, and as you think about what's going on in the world, I want you to think about what you tell yourself. And here's some of my example. What I tell myself is they need to fix it. They need to fix it. Why did this happen? I don't want to go out. How do I protect the people I love? All of this internal dialogue is what we would call advisor behaviour. And you can see it all has the quality of trying to predict and work out, how do I fix it? And so think of what we call advisor as just the behaviour of predicting, judging, evaluating, all of that stuff that we do. You can call it any word you want. And what we want to do is learn how to use our self-talk in ways that are flexible. So the advisor, I want to be really clear, it's just a label we use to describe how you tell yourself things, what's good, what's bad, and how to fix problems. It typically includes helpful ways that you can use it, include things like problem solving. We teach young people problem solving, thinking about how to use the past to learn from your mistakes, thinking about how you can improve at things, being aware of when your thinking is not helping you, and telling yourself helpful things like, there are reasons to keep trying. So what we want to do is teach young people how to use their self-talk in ways that help. So it's, for those of you who know the Adult ACT model, this is beyond diffusion. And instead, we're in a place of giving you much more than diffusion. We're actually giving you ways of thinking about, how do I train this person's language? And I'm going to make it too simple. But the steps we want to use is, again, to think about accepting the normality of our language use and then taking actions. So the normality of our language use is basically this. My advisor is designed to look out for danger and to tell me that things are bad and that I need to get away from those bad things. And to understand that we use it for predicting the future based on a sense of keeping safe. And what we can do instead is teach young people, this is a bit dense, this slide. We can teach young people a couple of different things. I'll just use this one. Accept that our advisor is good for lots of things, but not everything. Find some ways to problem solve and to teach language that is flexible. Try new rules. We particularly work on helping young people with new rules. This is one of my favourite rules. You're never too small to make a difference. Never too small to make a difference. So we actually work with young people to develop rules that can help them. When we say rules, it's a self-rule. You're never too small to make a difference is one that I think is really important for me. But young people have different ways of thinking about it. And that you are in charge. Not your thoughts, you're in charge. So you can find out ways to develop new rules and to test your old rules. When we work with young people and we hear shoulds and musts and have tos, then it's a time to say, okay, let's loosen. Let's loosen from the should and must and have to. and start finding a way to use your advisor to help you live well. One of the key things that we teach young people, and we call it switching, is when you feel like your thoughts are really stuck and trapped you down, then one thing that's really easy to do is to get out of your advisor and step into your noticer. Or get out of your advisor and step into your discoverer and use that behavior instead. So I teach young people that the D, N, A, and V, to think of them like, legs of a chair or wheels of a skateboard, and you need all four. And if you spend all of your time trying to live with this little guy, then you are missing out on a really big part of being a human, and you can find a way to live with all of your behaviors in a way that helps you. So switching viewpoints is a really important thing. I just put this image in because I really love it. This is another UNICEF image. This is a young girl, and she's obviously Asian. And in the context of coronavirus, she's written "not the enemy" on her face. And so the reason I chose this image is it's a way of a young person creating a new rule for themselves. So this young girl might go around with a rule that says, "I'm not the enemy." And that can help her manage in this difficult time. And then what we want to do is connect our advisor skills, our self-talk, to the things that we want to do, to our V. So I can use my self-talk to organize my tasks, to make lists, to search for answers. I can use it to do gaming that I like. I can use it to make new creations. I can use it to work out how to live in the world. And I can use it to understand that I can do some things in the context of the pandemic. This is a young girl who's used it in a way to say, health people are our heroes. And here's a new rule that she's made. We can win and we will win. So a lot of the clinical work, I see clients every day and on Zoom, and a lot of the clinical work I've been doing with young people is helping them create a new rule for themselves and to use it often. And I begin by often saying things like, "This will end. This will end. We will find a way." And even in our darkest days, when we think we won't, we know we will, and we can remind ourselves, we will find a way. We will win, and we can win. Because your advisor, your self-talk, its job is to look out for danger. So when things get bad, we get stuck inside, it's terrible, it's never going to be better, we're never going to find a way, I can't cope with this, it's horrible. And all of those things are true. It is horrible. And we can learn to think in ways that actually help us. Here's a young girl who's from Nepal, which is wonderful because I spend lots of time in Nepal, but this is a UNICEF one. And she's created a rule, we're safe and hopeful. And look at this imaging, and thinking about advisor is not just words, but also images are verbal behavior too. Look at this image that she's created. It's just beautiful. This is how we empower young people. It's not putting a positive spin on it. It's not just saying, think positive, it will be okay. It's understanding that the job of your self-talk is to say, where are the problems? Where is the danger? What do I do about it? But we can also train our self-talk into stepping into a place of agency where we can say, this is what you do about it. And actually, what you do about it is often not as hard as it sounds. What about if you went out with a little rule like, this will end? Or if you had a rule like, we can win and we will win. Not to be oblivious to the problems we face, but to understand that your advisor is always going to tell you it's going to be terrible and it will never end. History tells us something different, of course. It does end. And so when you start to think about that, what we start to do is ask young people, and here is mine in red, ask young people to think about how to use their self-talk, their advisor, flexibly. So here's my rule that I use all the time. It will end. It will end. How do I act on my value is another rule that I think when I'm really struggling. How do I do what I care about? And a really important part of when language traps you, switch. Let go of language. Step into your noticer. Step into your discoverer. Use something different. I'm going to talk with you about your discoverer. Discoverer is a class of behaviour that basically just think of trial and error and repertoires of behaviour. So think about it in this way. What are your behaviours or habits that you've developed in the context of the pandemic? There'll be behaviours and habits that you've developed that you like, and many that you don't like. We're all talking about coronavirus kilos. How many kilos we've gained from being inside lockdown or quarantine or working online all the time. So this is just a way of thinking about our behaviours and what we do. And I'll out my behaviours. This is what I've been doing that I'm not so happy about. Overeating, not exercising as much as I want, drinking too much wine. I've given up the wine. This is a couple of months ago. Drinking too much wine. I had to give up the wine. Sleeping too late and leaving my to-do list, putting it aside, right? So this is me using my discoverer outside my awareness and developing repertoires of behaviour that are not flexible, that are not how I want to be. And what we can do instead is develop repertoires of behaviour that allow us to create and build on, develop self-agency. For example, paying attention to the consequences of your actions. Taking a risk and trying something new. Challenging yourself to see if you can get better at it. Paying attention to whether your behaviour creates vitality in your life or destroys it. And I can tell you that overeating and overdrinking and not exercising did not create vitality in my life. That's why I had to give up wine. So finding a way to use your discoverer to accept and act. Okay. That means things like, this is from a young person's perspective, accepting that some things you do don't make your life better. Accepting that your bad habits are part of the pandemic and they're normal. It doesn't make you a bad person. And then finding ways to take action. Stepping out of your comfort zone and trying something different and seeing how that works. I've got some young people's examples here. This is where small things are really important. For a young person, for example, going exploring. This is a UNICEF COVID-19 youth actions where young people have thought about things that they can do. Artwork, building their skills, doing something they care about, connecting with people. And the most important thing that happens when you start to get people to use their Discoverer is you get active hope. And if you take away one thing from this webinar, take away active hope. Hope comes through our actions. And so active hope is things like using technology. Like right now, I get to talk to South America, right? Active hope. Being a champion of your school and your neighbourhood, finding ways to build active hope, to say, we can do this and we will do this. Checking on each other, creating social support groups, using our media in ways to connect, doing our part. These are all ways that we can immediately flip into a place of feeling like, oh, there's something I can do. Staying connected. I love this one. This is if any of you work in young people groups, this would be a lovely group activity. This is having young people in the context of the pandemic use cameras and take self-photos as a way of speaking. So taking photos of themselves as a way of speaking and then putting them together to share. Be a great way to do a group project. So thinking about action that you can take. And I wrote some actions that I would take just as an example of how small they can be. Going for a walk, sharing with others instead of hiding at home and eating, connecting with people, and doing things like messaging, SMSing people and calling them. And immediately you step into a place where you're taking actions that change things. For young people, they really need to maintain connection with their school and their community. No matter what's happening, they need to be connected with their school and their community. And then we come back to thinking about how the red are the flexible behaviours and the black are the inflexible behaviours or the stuck behaviours. And what I want to do is think about with a young person whether the behaviours I'm engaging in are flexible and help me get connected with what I care about in the middle. So seeing all of this as normal, all of this as part of the human experience, and really helping people gently shift from awareness of what I'm doing to being able to do something else that really helps them. And I want to add one thing. I want to add this. This is I just want to leave you with this, and we can take a few minutes for questions if you want to, Manuela. One of the problems I think that we face is that our mind and body are often set for problem focused so much that we think the sky will fall on us. And we also think that to change a massive problem like the pandemic or climate change or economic crisis, that we personally have to be doing that, like changing governments, that we personally have to be able to be big enough to do those big things. But the research does not show that. The research shows that small steps actually make the difference. Because when you have one young person in the pandemic, for example, reach out to a friend, they feel better. The friend feels better. And you're moving that young person into a place from helplessness to agency. And so mostly what I want to leave you with is to find a way to help the young person take some positive action, even the smallest of actions, and help them know that that small action builds for the whole and creates change. I think I'll leave it there, but I'll take some questions. And I know that we're up at time. Sorry, Manuela.
Don't worry, we are delighted to have you. So if you can stay, we can go to questions.
I can stay for about 10 minutes and then I've got another meeting.
Perfecto, entonces en este momento pueden hacerle alguna pregunta a Luis, quien quiera, levante la mano virtual, así le abro el micrófono, ¿sí? Y hagan las preguntas en español, por favor.
Don't be shy. Someone will have a question.
Carolina Príncipe, ¿levantaste la mano?
Sí. Hola. Bueno, antes que nada, gracias, Luis. Ay, perdón, voy a cambiar de canal pues si no me escucho. Ahí está. Muchas gracias y gracias, Manu y Paulina. Quería preguntar cortito si están haciendo algo comunitario, grupal, en relación a esto que decís de pequeñas acciones, sobre todo orientadas al cambio en sus comunidades, ¿sí? En la pequeña comunidad de cada adolescente, si hicieron intervenciones, ¿nos puedes contar algo en relación a eso, a mover a los adolescentes a generar cambios en sus grupos sociales y obviamente luego llevarlo a cambios más grandes?
Yeah, I have been. I'm just coming out of a geographical area that's been in lockdown for ever. So I've been working mostly online with young people, but I'm also working in a local community school, and we've been working online, and we have been very much helping people to think about action that they can take. And I am honestly surprised at how the smallest of action changes things. Getting young people connected into social groups, for example, just having the chance to connect and talk to each other. I wish I had to say something really incredible, but it's really not. It's about moving them into a sense of agency and understanding that right now, the smallest of steps changes us. And finding a way to help young people. What I do is I help young people think of what they can do. So I don't tell them what to do. I create a framework for what can you do. And inside an awareness that the smallest thing is what is needed. And I usually reinforce that by helping them get connected with what happens when they do that first small step. Like when you sent that text message, how did you feel afterwards? And what happened for your day? And to really understand that that's actually the key. That's the key. In a context of a human mind that says we have to fix everything, which is overwhelming and really not the truth. We just have to do the smallest things inside our communities, and that will help us and have a cascade effect. I really do think that cascade effect is really important. So think of connection and agency inside the normality that our minds will always focus on the worst. That's probably not concrete enough, but that's kind of the best I can say.
Muchísimas gracias. Y sirve un montón y contagia las ganas de hacerlo.
Thank you.
Como todo lo que haces, en realidad. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Well, I think what you're saying is you really want to help people do two things. Be aware and talk about and share that sense of despair and sadness, and not hide from that. And then move into, let's do one small thing. Right. And just notice what happens when it's that one small thing, like a new rule, this will end, or an action, or doing something with how you're a sense of a body in the world, like just go out and look at nature, look at the sky. Even if you're in the city, you still have the sky.
Muchas gracias y muchas gracias por la pregunta. Y tenemos 3 minutos más. Isn't that, Louise? We have 3 minutes. Una pregunta corta.
3 more minutes is fine.
Una pregunta corta más que alguien quiera hacer.
Quisiera preguntarle a Louise alguna metáfora o alguna actividad puntual que a ella le haya resultado para clarificar valores más allá de las conocidas en ACT. Gracias.
Oh, yeah. I'll show you a metaphor that I use that I really love. Let me find it, if I can quickly find it, because I think I've got it here on my computer. I have a new metaphor that I use, and we actually wrote it into our new book and it's so much fun. We have this metaphor. Let me share it with you. We have this metaphor. I do a mindfulness exercise. I don't know if you can see this. I do a mindfulness exercise where I ask people to imagine what it's like to be living in a place that we call Zombieland. Many of us live in Zombieland right now. Every day is the same. You get up and you go to work or go to school and you go home, right? And so we use this as a mindfulness exercise. South Americans know what zombies are, right? Yep, okay. And then we do a mindfulness exercise, and we might finish on this. We do a mindfulness exercise on understanding and getting connected with those days when you wake up and for some reason you wake up and you begin by getting a sense of the sun, that shines through your window. And maybe instead of rushing off to work, you were just able to sit for a few seconds in the sun. And maybe when you get your cup of coffee, instead of quickly grabbing it and running, you stop and smile and say hello to the person who gives you your coffee. And that day when you go to work and you take a few moments to stand in the corridor and say hello to a work colleague. And you do all of these small things throughout the day. And to get a sense of what that is like. And we do these two as a mindfulness exercise. One is in a day of vitality, and one is in the day of a zombie. And we use that as a metaphor for understanding how we shift from one to another. And if you got even the smallest of change in my very rapid discussion of that, even a small change, because it was too quick, then what you can see is the shift from dark zombie to vitality happened while you were sitting in the chair and you hadn't done anything different and you hadn't moved. And what does that tell you? Right? It tells you that there are things that we can do inside us that don't have to change what's around outside us. And I don't mean in the way of ignoring the bad stuff, but in a way of saying, actually, I can shift myself, my psychology, from dark and terrible to vitality and value without doing anything physical outside the world. It all happens inside me. So that's very quick, but we use that as a mindfulness exercise. And in those two places, I can just contrast what happened. Where was the shift? What changed? You're still sitting in the chair, right? And what changed is what's happening inside you. And that's the work we do. That's probably it in a nutshell. Thanks, good question. We probably need to finish. So you can all go to
Muchísimas
bed.
gracias. You have to be somewhere else. Thank you very much, Louise. Muchísimas gracias, Louise. Muchísimas gracias, Paulina. Y muchísimas gracias a todos. Esto realmente así fue un nuevo encuentro significativo. Thank you, Louise, for this marvelous talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, Manuela. And Manuela, as soon as I get off here, I'll send you that slide so you can send it to people. By all means, just share it around. Thank you. It's been really nice to meet you. And I know in 1 hour I've gone blah, 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 blah.
Adiós. Thank you.
Bye.
Muchas gracias a todos. Muchas gracias, Luis.
Thank you, Luis.
Bye.
Gracias, Manu.
Gracias, Manu. Gracias, Paulina.
Gracias, Paulina.
Gracias, Manu.
Gracias a todos.
Gracias.
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 Gracias, Manu.
Gracias.
Gracias a todos.
Gracias.
Somos mexicanos.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Muy lindo, gracias.
Gracias a todos. Gracias.
Gracias.